What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Gravity Podcast. I am your host, Chris. Thanks for joining us today. I'm excited about this podcast. My friend JT, the podcast host for Consequence of Habit, is going to be joining us today. And I've known JT for a little bit less than a year, and I've been excited to watch the things that he's doing. He is diving into this conversation of the consequences of our habits, the routines that we have on a daily and weekly basis, and what are the outcomes, both the good ones and the bad ones, of our habits. And I feel like it gels really good together with this conversation of gravity. How do we establish foundations? How do we stay grounded with 2 feet on the ground so that we can filter through all of the noise and chaos in this world? JT and I had some great conversation, and I'm hoping that you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed recording it. Let's get started. What is going on, JT? How you doing, brother?
Chris, it's finally happened. It's finally happening, man. We're actually face to face, kind of virtually, and getting to actually talk to each other, man. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a little bit. I'm excited. Thanks, brother.
Yeah.
I have to, this isn't where I thought we were going to go right off the bat, but I have to, notice that you're enjoying a beverage over there. Like what are you drinking?
Oh man, it's my staple. Yeah, right before we jumped on, I'm off work. It's Friday. I grabbed one of these upside down Athletic Brewing fine beverages. So that's what I'm sipping on.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you and you bringing attention to Athletic Brewing because it's something that I've really been enjoying as well.
Cool.
Like I hear you say a lot, sometimes whether we totally abstain from alcohol or not, sometimes we're just, needing to go to the kids' soccer game later. And we don't want to be doing that, having a couple beers down and being able to enjoy a great, tasty beer without the alcohol has been a nice addition to my life. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, that's how I first found you. And I don't remember how we started communicating. I was probably stalking you on some level, and you were probably considering getting a no contact order. Hey, not a big deal. That happens. But I'm sure I heard your podcast, the Consequence of Habit podcast, and I started listening. And your story, as you kind of unpack that with different guests as they told their story, is what grabbed my attention. Can you maybe just start there? What started this idea of consequence of habit?
So the idea of it came from my own realization that my bad habits were really starting to play some massive consequences in my life. I shouldn't even say started to. They had been for a period of time, and I really just wasn't I won't even say I wasn't aware, but I just wasn't connecting the dots because I was doing the same thing I kind of had always done. And I was doing the same things that people I was around were doing. But I came to realize that the things that I cherish the most, some of the most important things in my life were being compromised by alcohol. So everybody's different. Some people can handle alcohol and they can have a little bit and they can relax and it just works in their life. And then there's other people where that's not the case. And I quickly started to realize that I was the latter of those two, and it just wasn't fitting in my life. So I made these massive changes. I quit drinking, and I went through a program to do that. I didn't just, some people, again, can just say, I'm not going to drink anymore. That wasn't me. And the further I got away from alcohol, the more I started to connect the dots and realize how much in my life it was affecting. And then I go, well, how many other things? What other bad habits do I have? And, how are they compromising me? Or what am I doing every single day? Is it adding value to my life? Or is it holding me back from, I've said it 1,000 times, but this idea of what we think we are as a whatever, fill in the blank, father, wife, son, anything. So I just started getting on a mic. I just so happened I'd been hosting a podcast for another beverage company, and it was big in the CrossFit world. It's a sporting drink called Kill Cliff, and I just started talking. I just started about habits and my own experiences, and then it just kind of took off from there. As about a year and a half ago now. And I've had some amazing experiences and interactions and built relationships with people that I never would have, to include you, Chris. And it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done in my life.
Wow. Hey, right at the beginning there, you talked about how your habits were starting to interfere, or you were starting to have the consequences of your habits. You're starting to experience the negative consequences. And you mentioned about some of those big relationships. And that's one of the things I'm interested in unpacking with the concept of gravity. How do we stay grounded? And what was your family's response when you sit there and say, hey, alcohol is interfering? It's interfering with the things that are important in my life. I imagine there was some sort of a process, support that your family's coming alongside you. What was that like?
Yeah, and they were, it was nothing but support. I think there was a little bit of surprise, not because, well, I'll say that everyone, just like their journey, everyone's experience around these things are different. And I'm always been really good at presenting myself in a certain way. So when, we grow up, we watch movies and TV shows, and you think of somebody who might, hold that title of an alcoholic, and you think of one thing. And I didn't fall into that kind of traditional idea of what an alcoholic was. I showed up for work every day. You never saw me sloppy. You probably never saw me or heard me slur. I didn't have DUIs. I didn't have all of these other things. So there was nothing but support. But at the same time, I think initially it was like, wait a minute, are you sure? And then as time goes on, because this is all they've known, they've only known me as this. They've only known me as a guy who gets home from work and he cracks beers, not Athletic Brewing, non-alcoholic beers, or I'm drinking wine, or so. I think there was support, there was a little bit of surprise, and then full transparency. There was, I would say, from people that are super close to you, like, man, do I even know this person? If they're struggling with something that's this bad and I didn't even know it, and they'll question that.
Yeah. Hey, you've touched on this now twice with both those answers. You started talking about you were really good at projecting this persona.
Yeah.
I was listening to some of your previous podcasts back on September 21st, which is my birthday. That's awesome. Last year, you were interviewing Seth Blaze, and you said, like being an actor, but no one ever says cut. And that just grabbed my attention because I've had those seasons of life where I'm projecting the image that I think everyone else wants. I'm projecting the image as a husband, the image as a father, where the reality is I work really hard at those things, but sometimes I really suck, right? Like sometimes I just totally screw it all up. And I'm going to my wife, I'm going to my daughters and saying, hey, dad screwed up here. Will you please forgive me? Tell me just kind of what that means to you, this living life, going through life and feeling like, hey, I'm putting on an act the whole time. I'm not really truly being me.
Oh, it's complete imposter syndrome. 100%. And to be honest with you, Chris, it's one of the things that led me down my path. Yeah. I've told this story a couple times, but I'll be at work and I'm in a position where I'm in front of a lot of people and I have to be, I'm in charge. I'm teaching. So people are looking up to me. So that was part of my persona. And then as a father, you have that persona of, the head of the household. Your kids look at you a certain way. But I knew when nobody else was around that it's not how I felt about myself. And I actually just told the story earlier today. And I don't know if this is quite answering your question, but I was being called in front of a room full of people and I was going to present something and I'm sitting in the back of the room and I'm thinking to myself, as the person's up, there's another person up front talking, and I knew I was going to get called on. And I'm like, man, I've got this all, I'm going to drop some knowledge on these people and they're going to see that, I'm a smart guy. I know what I'm talking about. And I start walking from the back of the classroom towards the front. And then something happened in those like, I don't know, 15 steps. Like the world just started collapsing on me. And at that moment, I didn't realize it until I had a little time to digest it. But I was having an anxiety attack. And I know at that moment, I felt I couldn't project, I couldn't package, I couldn't present myself in this way. And I felt like everyone saw the real thing. And the real thing knew I had some issues, right? So at 2 a.m, I know I have issues. And now everyone else in this room can see it. And it was terrifying. So that was one of the first signs for me that like something's not right. And to go back to your point, I just had another conversation a couple of days ago with a friend of mine, Chris Norris, who you've probably interacted with a little bit on LinkedIn. And there's not a danger, but as long as you're open to what you just said, you can, I host a podcast in a nonprofit called Consequence of Habit. And I've got some really crappy habits, right? Like, and I think there's power in saying that. So people don't think I never want to come across like I got it figured out. I just I'm curious about it, and I'll leave it at that, and I'll try my best and I'll talk about it. But I've still got plenty of bad habits.
Wow. You, over the last probably month, again, my wife and I, we've been roundtabling this idea of gravity and how do we keep 2 feet on the ground. And it's been a rough month. I'm not going to lie. Like I have felt like a failure more in the last month than probably the previous 11 months.
Yeah.
And really, honestly, I don't want to sit there and classify, try to make it sound better or worse. There's areas that I need to sit there and be better at. Mm-hmm. And maybe they were already there, but over the last month, I feel like there's this spotlight. No one else even knows about them really. Right. But I know about them. Right. And it's made me feel more unqualified to sit there and launch a podcast talking about how we stay grounded. Are you serious? I'm floating away, man.
Right.
You need to throw me a weight, an anchor to sit there and keep me down. So that really, really resonates with me. Hey, I've never heard that piece of your story. I've never heard the anxiety piece. Tell me more about that. Was this like a one and done? No. Did this go on for a while?
Yeah. I mean, it went on this was the irony of it is during the time I was doing stand-up comedy on this as a side thing, and I would be in front of, at times like 200 people. And I would be nervous, but there was something about that work environment that I didn't like it. And just today I had to present in front of a group of people. I walked into a room and they said, "Hey, can you go up front and talk to a bunch of people I don't know?" And it hit me like that. All of a sudden, that fight or flight starts kicking in. And my heart's going 1,000 miles an hour. And I know all through, because I host the Consequence of Habit, I know this breath work and these techniques, and I'm trying it all, man. I'm pulling it all out. And I got through it. But I think there's something to be said. I told my wife, I said, I had a lot of anxiety today. I had to be in front of people and I had a lot of anxiety. And she said, how'd it go? And I said, it went well. The first thing I went up and I said to everybody, "Hey, for the record, I don't do this all that often, and I don't know what to do with my hands right now." And with that, it's everyone, you get a chuckle, which makes me feel better. It calms me down, and then it's out there. So even you saying those things, you're not coming across like you've got the doctorate in staying grounded. So, yeah.
What did everyone deals with, heals from. I'm a recoverer or a survivor of having an anxiety disorder, like a heart attack, calling the ambulance, them hooking me up to the instruments, looking at my wife in the eye saying, "Babe, I love you. I'm going to die. I'll see you in heaven down the road." So I know my story in reference to the healing process. Was this something that you ended up connecting with, whether it be counselors, other resources that helped you get to a spot where it's manageable? I mean, like what you said there, you have tools now. I like to say tools in the toolbox. You don't use them all the time, but there's tools that you have to go to sit there and manage and live with being anxious.
Yeah. Yes, I did. And it all started around the same time. That was to me a sign that I've said it before, where I felt like it was a pressure cooker going on, and that was the first signs that the seal's starting to go. I can't. There's too much pressure, and I got to figure something out. I was still drinking then, but I knew deep down that was part of the issue. That was a big part of the issue, because that goes back into, for me, it goes into my role as a father and when I was teaching my kids, and that, I can go down that rabbit hole, and that is generational for me. So I was doing the same thing, and that had been weighing on me for a very long time. So I started, I sought help. The 12-step program was for the drinking, but to be honest with you, I think whether people drink or not, a 12-step program is as beneficial as anything out there. I think it's fantastic. It really connects why we do things or why we feel things, and you kind of get to the bottom of it. And then on top of that, at my own, seeing somebody. And so I do have some tools, but to be honest, I still have anxiety. Part of it, I think, is the acceptance of going, hey, I've got anxiety, and there's going to be symptoms of that are going to come up from time to time. And it's not the end of the world, but it's what it is.
I've heard you talk about, and I can't remember what you just said, but controlled breathing. I've heard you, has it been like the last 9 months to a year that really has become a thing for you?
Yeah. The breathwork has been, it's played a big role. When you talk to people about meditation, a lot of people say, well, it doesn't work for me because my mind races too much. And anyone who's really into meditation that'd be like saying, I don't stretch because I'm really tight. But for breath work for me, specifically the Wim Hof style of breath work, it brings my mind, it brings a calmness to my mind very quickly in a way that I wasn't getting from just regular, following my breath meditation. So it's for me, it's just in a way, if I need to really kind of calm down, or my ADD brain will, doing the podcast and doing teasers and then the website, and then my normal 9-to-5 job, and I'll find I'm like hanging all over the place. It is a way between that and cold exposure has been something that's really helped me. Between those two, it kind of takes the fight out of me, like my brain. It just kind of calms it down. So yeah.
Blew my mind when the only breath work really I've ever explored and that I put into practice is autogenic breathing, combat breathing. I know that you and I have similarities. We both served in the Air Force, and something I learned back then, and it blows my mind, just the physiological response when we have heightened stress, right? And that can be a life and death experience, like being in the military, or that could be you're in a conflict with your spouse, right? This is an important relationship. We don't want this to go south. And I'll be honest with you, like I have very little anxious moments anymore. It was really, really bad, and then it got better. But I'll tell you what, if me and my wife are in conflict, the most important relationship in my life, and if we're in conflict, and that is, I'm not going to say in question, but it's a threat right now, right? Because at any moment I could say something really stupid, right? And
right.
My wife lets me know that I do fall asleep at night. She may get the pillow and just bring it over to my side of the bed for a little bit. She doesn't want to kill me, but she's just going to sit there and practice. So that's, I still have it at times. And especially if there's conflict with my wife, and I recognize I stop breathing. Mm-hmm. We stop breathing when we have increased stress. Our bodies, we have more shallow breaths. They're quicker, and we're not getting oxygen to the brain, which means we're going back to that primal brain. We're not using the frontal lobe anymore. I know I'm jumping up on a soapbox here, but Wow.
It is. And one of the things that you and I connected about was one of the podcasts with I forget which Gracie it was, where he talks about the amygdala hijacking. And you're right. You go back to that animalistic fight or flight. And what's important for people to know, because some people, they want to minimize their anxiety because of what induces it. We can say, hey, this goes back to like, the times where you're getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and that sounds great. But I think that for some people, that minimizes when they go, hey, I have anxiety because of a conflict with my wife, or me walking into in front of a classroom. For me, those things don't really matter, but my anxiety doesn't know. Though that chemical reaction doesn't know. It's telling me a saber-toothed tiger's coming, and I'm having a lot of the same kind of reactions to it. So, yeah, it's legit. I mean, you've probably seen in other avenues, but when people really have the reactions to it, I mean, you lose, you get tunnel vision. There's auto. You don't hear sound like you normally do. Anyone who's been in stressful situations that tries to do anything requiring dexterity with their hands, it's gone. For all the amazing things that humans can do and how advanced we are, dude, at the end of the day, we're just animals, and we have these weird, funky things, man, that we are not always in control.
We like to think we are.
Yeah, we trick ourselves.
Hey, you've said this now a couple of times, and so it sounds like this has been an issue for you before, but in my mind, you've clearly moved past this. Well, my story isn't that big of a story, right? Like, I mean, I wasn't getting DUIs. I wasn't kicking the family dog.
Right.
I didn't get, all these consequences because of my alcohol use. And I feel like we do that as humans, right? And whether it be with alcohol, drug abuse, whether it be having depression, anxiety disorder, my story isn't as big as Tom's or Sue's. So I'm going to minimize it. It's not that big a deal. At what point did you get to a spot? Because here's the thing, when you share your story, that's power. There's somebody else that's going through what you went through, and what you still sometimes go through, what I still sometimes go through. And I'll tell you what, man, when I was in the really bad spot, when I was having an anxiety disorder that turned into clinical depression because I wasn't dealing with it, it was the people that came up to me and shared their story that gave me hope. It was those folks that made me realize I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm going to have to put some work into this. This is going to take some time, but I'm going to be okay. Yeah. And that was just a huge turning point for me. And then it made me realize, again, my story, I mean, yeah, I called an ambulance one time and I thought I was dying. I mean, it was a huge event for me, but I have a buddy that is an Air Force veteran that he told me when one of his anxiety attacks, he just blacked out. Right. And it's like, wow, yeah, your story's better than mine. So I feel like as dudes, we sometimes do that. We almost try to one up each other with some stories, but then in this realm, we almost try to like one down ourselves. Like, mine, I'm not that big a deal. So at what point did you realize the power of your story and the fact that you were going to be able to impact other people's lives through sharing it?
That's an awesome question, because full transparency, there's been times that I've been in a room for a 12-step and looked around and had imposter syndrome about I drink too much. Because the guy next to me, there's like a running joke in some of those places that say I'm allergic to alcohol. When I drink it, I break out in handcuffs, and that wasn't me. And you first go there and people want to help you. So they say, they ask you, were you ordered by the judge to come here? And I go, no. And I have to be careful because at first I was like, God, no. But the important thing is, what I shared with all of them is there was this thing I couldn't stop doing. And their repercussions had been more severe. But I also realized there's a lot of repercussions that could have come my way that I was just lucky that they didn't. Very easily could have come my way. And I think one of the ways that's really affected me, and then I'll go back to actually answering your question, is I found a lot more empathy in people in general after I've gone through that, because when you sit in a room like that, you are around the gauntlet of tax brackets and ethnicity, and it doesn't matter. Like mental health, addiction doesn't give a crap what you look like. Doesn't care what your 401k is like.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. And I started to, the further I got away from alcohol, the more I connected why I was doing some of the things I was doing. And we can get into dopamine and what that does. And that's my biggest kick right now. Like, to me, it's fascinating. But I started to realize that they're no different. Their repercussions were a little bit worse. Mine could have been. I got really lucky, and that some of that goes back to being the charlatan that I felt like I was, that I could come across a certain way, and maybe they just were a little more authentic and really showed what kind of mess they were at the time. There was times I've been around people who just couldn't drink. Like if they drank, they were off on a 3-day bender, and they were in jail or passed out somewhere. And I used to think, man, their decision to not drink must be easy because everything goes to crap if they do. Where I can at least pretend that it's not, but I also know that my wife probably, I've said this joke a million times, but it's like being murdered with a wiffle ball bat. Like it just takes a really long time. It's just these little hits instead of getting like knocked out with like a big punch. And then you're like, wow, I better not mess with that guy. I'm just getting stung. And I knew like I said, the further I got away from alcohol, the more I realized I did have a serious problem. And then the more I looked around me, the more people I saw that were very much like me. They pretended. I shouldn't say that to pretend, because I don't really know their scenarios. In my view, they were dependent on something, but they still were able to manage to come across like they weren't. And I think that's what I felt like there was this need to talk about it.
I like it. Hey, I'm interested. I was listening to, I think it was episode 56 today, and I'm not going to remember who the guest was right now. He was
Dan Ellis. Yeah.
Yeah. I was listening to that earlier, and you guys got into kind of your military experiences and just what impact did that have on all of this? Do you think, the Air Force is big. They have core values, right? So they have these foundational pieces that they try to lay for all airmen to give us this common sense of purpose and structure. How did that play into your personality, some of the addictions, right? When I was in the Air Force, especially when I was in Korea, people were drinking.
So
yeah. Oh yeah. Unregulated alcohol, man. You might have 180 proof this time and 90 proof next time. You don't know. You're going to find out in about 10 minutes. So I don't know. How did that experience, I assume it probably had both positive consequences and negative consequences that came along with it. What are your thoughts?
Well, for one, it saved me. It truly saved me, Chris. Like I was going to school in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I lasted.
Isn't that where the office is? Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Thunder Mifflin. Yeah.
Holy smokes! Have you been there? Have you met Jim and Pam?
Yeah, Jim and I are hanging out next week.
I'm sorry. Keep going. You're going up. Scranton.
I talk about on the podcast about being ADD. And so I struggled through high school. I really struggled through high school. And then I go off to college thinking I could handle that. And I couldn't, man. It was a train wreck. I lasted one semester. I ended up in a lot of trouble with the city of Scranton. And I went into the Air Force. Like I enlisted because I didn't know what to do. And like when I talked to Dan Ellis, like the reasoning for him going in, and it's just amazing. And then I look back, I'm like, well, I didn't know what else to do with my life. And for me, that was buying time. But structure, what I found was structure is it's what I need. Like me without structure, look out. It's probably not going to be good. So the Air Force saved my life in a lot of ways, I think. I excelled in the Air Force because I had that structure. I think I would have excelled in anything that kind of kept me accountable. And then, even to the point when I got out, I thought I was cured. Like I thought I was fixed. And I quickly realized that, no, you were just locked away for a bit. you better find something else that's providing the structure that you need. So yeah, but as far as drinking went, it didn't help that, but I think no matter where I had been, I think we all surround ourselves with like-minded people because we feel, especially when we're doing things that aren't good for you, because you don't feel guilty. People to your left and right are doing the same thing.
Yeah. How has that been? Because again, one of the things that I think I already said this, but that relationship piece, I feel like our relationships in our life have such a huge impact on the people that we are.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say we can't change that, but oftentimes we sometimes have to change the crowds. We have to change the people that we're with. Did that happen to you? When you stand up and say, "Hey, I'm giving up alcohol." Did you lose friends? Were your friends like, "Hey, dude, we're here to support you"? I mean, how did that play out?
That's tricky. For the most part, I mean, everyone always supported it, but if your friends, especially if you're hanging out with people that drink and someone says, "Hey, I'm not going to drink," you've probably heard it before. And chances are it's this temporary thing. And then you're like, you're back. So a lot of people were just waiting for me to be back part. But I knew I like to think that I wasn't coming back. So people were like, "Hey, well, how long are you taking a break for?" And I try not to put numbers on it. Like, I'm going to go 3 months. I just said, "Hey, I'm not going to drink right now. And we're just going to take it, we're going to take it a day at a time and see how it goes." And there's a lot of pressure. There's always a lot of pressure by especially if you're around the same people you drank with. And they're gonna clown you. They're gonna give you a hard time. But what was really eye-opening to me were the amount of people then reached out to me afterwards, after they realized that this just wasn't this little kick I was on, and were curious on why and how I went about it. It's funny because someone will, like I said, give you a hard time, and then when I would have these heart-to-hearts, I wasn't telling people I was going to meetings. I wasn't advertising that. And then when I felt like somebody was really kind of reaching out for help, I would come out with it. Like, I would say, fundamentally, this thing was compromising me. It was compromising the most important relationships I have in my life, potentially my job. Like there wasn't anything. It didn't have its little claws in. So I went to this thing and started going to meetings. They're like, "What? You went to, Jesus, dude, you went to meetings?"
Well, you had a real problem. I thought it was just a small one.
Yeah. And I'm like, "Dude, did you hear everything else I just said? Like the most basic things in my life." And the meeting's free. It's not like, I just showed up and I'm there for an hour and then I leave. Like it's the simplest thing in the world. So yeah, and there are still people that I probably don't get invited to stuff, and that's okay. Like to me, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze anymore, and I'm fine with that.
Juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I like that. Hey, Consequence of Habit podcast. Is it like 20 months old now? Getting real close to the 2-year mark.
It's getting there. It's getting there. I've been struggling lately, to be honest with you, Chris. Like COVID tricked me. COVID tricked me into thinking I had more time than I actually do when I went back to work. So it's been a little tough lately. But yeah, I would say it's 20 months where I have, today was episode 56 went out, but I probably have another 10 to 15 already done. When I say done, the interview done, I haven't edited and everything. But yeah, almost 2 years, almost 2 years.
So you've decided to go further though. And this is one of the things I've liked watching you slowly unpack is is the nonprofit piece of Consequence of Habit. So we start as a podcast, you're having these great conversations. At what point did you go, hey, there's something more. I can make this bigger?
People started asking me, all right, what have you learned over the past year? Like, what have you learned over the past, 40 episodes or something? What are the big takeaways? And I kept pointing to like one episode individually, like I was taking bits from each one. And I thought, well, how can we kind of synthesize all of this and take the fundamental stuff that I'm learning, and then actually put it to work. Like where the rubber meets the road, and not just talk about it. I didn't know how hard that was going to be. I didn't know honestly, if I'd known what went into it, I don't know if I'd like to think I would have done it, but I was naive, and which was a good thing. What we want to do is, we're trying to just kind of empower people by bringing awareness to the impact habits have on our lives, specifically our mental health, our success, and the environment. Because that's another one of my passions is the environmental stuff. And through all of it, and I think we touched on this a little bit earlier when I talk about empathy and habits. To level the playing field, I found that we all have something. We all have our things that we do that hold us back. We've put each other in boxes by saying what those are. I'm a drug addict. I'm a sex addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm addicted to my phone. I'm a workaholic. I'm addicted to toxic relationships. Like, there are all things that we are dealing with. When we put those boxes on stuff, it makes it much harder to see ourselves and other people, right? So
yeah,
my goal in this is to just talk about habits. And I don't care if it's someone who's using heroin or if it's an entrepreneur that's trying to, whatever. And then just to spark some interest in ourselves, and then be involved in something bigger than ourselves. So some type of service work. Where we're kind of out of our own head. And that's a staple for a 12-step is service work. But in the context of like an alcohol program or drug program, it's usually in the basement of some church somewhere. And I want to take it out of there, and I want to put it like, let's put this out in front of everyone. And because if we're honest, especially with like the technology, we're all kind of hooked. There's no doubt, it's the new smoking. So that's the goal, not just technology, but just across the board. Let's just talk about it. Let's be open about it. And then let's maybe try to find some purpose in our lives by doing something bigger than us, and see where that goes.
Yeah. Simon Sinek does, he does obviously a number of podcasts, or not podcasts, but YouTube videos. And there's this one where he's relating the dopamine that we get each time we get that little ding, right? That little dopamine hit that we get. And the fact that we've now put that in the hands of our children. Mm-hmm. And he relates it to, it'd be like flinging open the liquor cabinet and telling little Johnny or little Susie, hey, I know the times are tough right now. Try the vodka. It'll get you through the next couple months. And it's just like, when you think about it in those terms, and then when you actually watch, I've watched it with my kids. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I we're in this tough spot because I have a couple adult children and then two that are still in the home, and one doesn't have a phone yet because she's that young. And like, we're kind of thinking we don't give her one ever, like, right? Like, seeing the negative effects. Now there's positive effects. Like, my kids having phones, me being able to communicate with them is great. Us engaging each other on social media, especially for the adults that live out of the house net, right? It's an amazing opportunity for us to connect. But seeing the negative consequences that have come about with some of my ladies, if I'm going to play on names here, since I just threw out the word consequence, it makes us totally lose our gravity, right? I've seen my kids melt down. One of my kids is absolutely remarkably creative. I can't remember how many likes she had on one of these TikTok videos. TikTok was giving her money. They were starting to pay her money because how much followers and likes she had on a video. And she had somebody say something negative, and she shut it down. And I'm okay with that, right? Like if that's what you need to do. But what I wasn't okay with is, sweetheart, you have how many hundreds or thousands of likes, people that are saying you rock. Who cares about the naysayer? Who cares about the one person or the handful of people that are going to speak poison into your life? So I don't know. I don't know about you, but I'm really struggling with, and there's two different challenges here. We keep the dopamine supply away from the kids, right? Don't give them a phone at all, but they're going to turn 18, right? Yeah. And society is going to tell them, you have to have this or you're missing out. Or we try to give it to them and teach them how to use it properly. And honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't have the answer for that.
I don't either. You know, I question a lot of times whether I can handle what technology does to my dopamine levels. Now, and I'm someone who's kind of predisposed to chasing that dopamine. And I've been doing a ton of research on it lately. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's not true. I listen to a lot of stuff. We'll count that as research. And I think it's Dr. Anna Lemke. She's got a new book out called Dopamine Nation, and she really breaks down on how the brain responds to it. And specifically with kids, I think we're definitely going to look back and go, that was a big, big mistake. I'm starting to feel the same way now about my own use of electronics in front of my kids. Like, we'll be sitting on the couch and my son and I are on our phones, as I was feeling about drinking, to be honest, because how can I say anything to him? What am I going to say to him?
I'm doing the same thing.
Get off your phone. Come on. Yeah. Hypocrite. So I definitely, I'm about halfway through a book called Digital Minimalism. And it's sending me for a ride, man. Like, it's got my mind spinning. Those engineers that put these things together in these apps, it is a purposeful, conscious thing. They are tapping into our brains. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, if someone wants to get involved in the Consequence of Habit nonprofit piece, and obviously the podcast, they can go to consequenceofhabit.org. But how about if they want to get involved in one of these service projects? Where is it starting? Where do you envision it going? Like, multiple cities potentially. What's happening?
Yeah, so it's going to start out near the Philadelphia. I'm just over the border from PA in Delaware, and it's going to start off there just because logistically it's what makes sense. I talked to a guy who started a nonprofit called Just One More Wave, and he's a veteran they started using surfing to help veterans dealing with PTSD, and it started off as this one thing, and then it just kind of spread, and it's worldwide now. And my pipe dream would be something along those lines, where people anywhere across the country, if they wanted to be involved, please reach out to me. We're really starting now the funding process, and if we have funding to help events across the country, then we 100% will. There's a big learning curve, and we're going to be messing up some. We have an event this month. It's called plogging. So we're going to be jogging and picking up trash at the same time. So we're hoping to bring somebody in first. We're going to talk about habits. We're going to look at ourselves, and then we're going to go do some plogging. And it's going to be a month-long thing where anyone can go out and pick up trash. And our dream there is to eventually have corporate sponsors for every bag of trash we pick up or something. They're donating so much, either to our nonprofit or another one. But yeah, the short answer is yes. I would love to see this spread. I think there's going to be a lot of positive things that come from it. And if, like you said, the consequenceofhabit.org, it's a new website. There was a consequenceofhabit.com that's going away. That's when it was just a podcast. So anyone who's signed up for that mailing list will then be switched over to the .org one. And Man, sign up for the newsletter. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to, even if it's to testimonial, you want to tell your story, get on there, man. I want to hear it.
I like it. Hey, one thing that stuck with me, I used to work in one of our high schools, and we had a drinking and driving campaign, or a not drinking and driving campaign, I guess is what I should call it. And the degree, the mark, the aim that I gave the students was greatness. And there's a book called Season of Life. Jeffrey Marks is the author, and he talks about Coach Biff. Biff is the head coach, true story. And he's known for giving these long 20 to 30 minute talks. And at one of the talks, he sits there and tells this group of young men, hey, my expectation on you is greatness. And he says, and we define greatness by the degree in which we positively impact other people's lives. Now, I'm not perfectly quoting that, but that's my definition now. Yep. That I oftentimes would give my students. I think you're doing this, brother. I think you're hitting greatness. I mean, impacting other people's lives. You've impacted my life.
That means more than you could ever imagine, because unfortunately, you're going to find out with podcasts, or I hope I'm completely wrong, is it's tough to get traction at times. And there's times I questioned the time commitments that I was putting in. I'm like, I don't even know why I'm doing this sometimes. And then I'll hear a message like that. And then honestly, I'll look back and I'll go, these interactions I've had, if this ended right now, has added so much value to my life. That there's a reason I feel like it's one of the most rewarding things I've done. And this isn't blowing smoke. I meant it when I said I'm excited about what you're doing, just because of the interactions that you and I have had, and I've seen the steam that you've built, even on your social media posts. I mean, the listeners don't know this, but it was probably 5 months ago. I was sitting in my back deck. You and I were talking, and you were helping guide me through some social media stuff. I foresee a lot of great things coming. I think that what you're talking about is needed very much right now. Yeah. And you and I talked offline about that, of the world we're living in now, the divides that we're all kind of feeling, that we're missing out on the fact that we're all humans. And we need some gravity. So
yeah, that great place to go. And that really was what I've been marinating in over the last 6 months or so, is just the fact that we're so focused on what we disagree with. Here's the deal, JT. I mean, we only know each other so much, but I guarantee you that if we continue to talk for like the next 5 hours, we're going to find some areas that you and I disagree on, right? Are we going to sit there and draw the line in the sand on all of our disagreements, though? Now, I'm not saying that there's not some that are worth drawing a line in the sand. I think there are in life.
Yep.
I think there are things where we should say, hey, this is my stance on this. If you can't respect that, then we probably can't have a relationship.
Yeah.
But I feel like everything is that right now, right? And like, I don't want to get into the politics of any of it, but why can't we just listen to people? Why can't we? There's another author, and she does a lot of, I think she's on NPR. Her name's Celeste Headley. And she talks in one of her books, I think it's titled We Need to Talk. And she talks about listening with curiosity. The fact that we've lost this. We've lost the ability to listen with curiosity. Instead, we listen with the intent to respond.
Yes. And
our brains can process the human language faster than the other person can talk. I think she says our brains can process it at 500 words per minute. And the average person can only talk between like 250 to 300 words per minute. So we're filling in the rest of that with thinking about, what am I going to say when you go to take that breath? And I do this, right? Like, I know this, and I work really hard to be an active listener, to listen well. And then I catch myself cutting in on people, and I'm just like, holy smokes. But now take it that next step further, not just the communication piece, but with all of these hot topics. And it seems like over the last year and a half, everything's been a hot topic. And I see people unfriending each other on social media, which, hey, if that's what you need to do to, to be healthy, then rock on. But I'm just saying, like, are we really going to fight with our neighbor next door just because they voted for a different person than us? Or can we still get along, and maybe I mow his lawn sometimes and sometimes he mows my lawn, and we take care of each other, right? I mean, I don't know. Are you seeing the same thing in your community that I'm seeing over here in Washington State?
It's everything, because everything's been politicized. And I did like this, I don't even know if you call it like a PSA, that this is probably closer when I started this thing, that I compared it to pro wrestling, where at least as a kid, you knew who the heel was. You knew who the bad guy was. And now the bad guy is all determined by where you get your content from, because they can flip it. And this is what we run towards. It goes back to even the habit thing of people dwell on the bad stuff instead of just running towards the good stuff. And everything kind of works out if you do that. We dwell on the bad stuff instead of dwelling on the things that we actually connect on. And when you do that, you make a human connection, and it makes working through those other things much simpler, I think. And you're right. There's going to be some things that you shouldn't. The boundaries should say that this isn't a person I need to be around. But yeah, I mean, people are fighting on airplanes. People are fighting on airplanes. We've lost our minds. We've truly lost our minds. And yeah, I do the same thing. I get wrapped up in it. I'll be on my phone and I'll realize that, I've found my way into some endless loop of politically charged videos. And then I get off and I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling irritated. Chris, I think we're coming back to these things right here. I'm holding the phone. I think we found the poison, man.
If it wasn't for those, we wouldn't even be exposed to half the stuff we're exposed to, right? And if half the stuff we're exposed to, regardless of the political lean, is garbage, which I don't know if that's the exact amount or not, but I'm just saying, if it is, then we're filling our brains with a whole bunch of garbage. Hey, that's something that I don't know if I want to call this a science or not. I teach a leadership class, and I talk about, I think it all starts with our thoughts, which the content we're taking in feeds our thinking. And I say that our thoughts will create our attitude. Our attitude is going to start creating some behaviors within us. And those behaviors are going to have a consequence on our relationships. And I like to give a story of my wife. For the last year and a half, she's gone back to school to get her master's degree and just working her tail off. And she's teaching full time as an emergency sub. And I agreed when she said she'd do this, when she told me, hey, this is what I want to do. I have a passion for teaching. I want them to be able to hire me full time. Hey, babe, let me take on some of the family chores. Let me take back the finances, because she had handled that for like 2 decades. Let me take back this and that. I want to serve you so that you can do this well. She's like, awesome. So, I mean, we're plugging along. Well, one of my chores is to make the bed in the morning. And when I walk around her side of the bed, I trip over her darn shoes just about every single day. I mean, what kind of woman leaves her shoes on the side of the bed, right? I mean, like, she's a horrible person. I mean, this is the thoughts. I don't know if I actually thought she's a horrible person, but I did sit there and think, why can't you be organized? I should have stuck you through the Air Force. They would have taught you how to fold your underwear, your socks, your towels, your t-shirts. And I'm sitting there starting to go down this road of being frustrated, thinking this thought, marinating. I like that word, because when you sit there and think about marinating a good steak, you just sit in it and just let it soak in. We do that with our thinking, and it just soaks in. And I'm starting to develop a bad attitude about the woman that I love, that has supported me through thick and thin, through an anxiety disorder and all this other stuff, right? And I had to stop myself and be like, Chris, you told her why don't you just pick up the shoes? Don't trip over them. You know they're there, right? You don't need to be surprised by this.
Yeah.
I don't know. What are your thoughts about this whole thought life? Does this have a big impact in your life as well?
On a whole lot of levels. I mean, it's a running joke between my wife and I that I'll have an argument with her without her presence. And then when we meet up, I'm itching for it. I'm ready for it because I already worked through what you're going to say. Like I already have responses to hypothetical things you've never even said to me yet. So yeah, I think that is something I'm certainly guilty of. And then even on a lesser side where I'll have negative thoughts and I compare to those to like, doing things when people aren't watching. No one else may know about it, but they weigh on you regardless, because at the end of the day, it's and when you constantly get in a negative loop, even though nobody else knows it, it is bothering you, and it's compromising you and how you feel about yourself, and inevitably, misery loves company, and you're gonna take it out on you're gonna kick the dog, or you're gonna bring it and take it on your wall or something. I don't kick the dog, everybody, but yeah, but you know what I mean. And it's, so yeah, thoughts mean a ton, man. When you see really positive people, when you see people really doing well, and you find out like they have affirmations, and I'm like, affirmations, that sounds like some, what are you talking about?
Some voodoo stuff or something?
Yeah.
Not that I'm talking about.
Yeah, right. Careful. And people, they'll say stuff. And I found that it really works. You tell yourself enough times and you'll believe it. Just like you tell yourself you're a piece of crap, or you're not capable, or this is too hard for you, or you keep telling yourself that and you will follow through with it. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Wow. What else, brother?
Let's, if you don't mind, I'm going to flip the script on you for a second.
All right, let's do this.
You and your wife, you go to her first and say, hey, I want to do this thing?
Oh yeah, I'm the one, and this will come out, I think, in our first podcast that we do together. We're gonna do Marriage Mondays, and we've already recorded one of them. And she talked about when I tell her about my dreams, she doesn't have to ask, because she knows I'm just gonna tell her, and it's like drinking through a fire hose, and it's just like super strong. And then she's my brake person. She's the one that sits there and pulls the brakes for me and says, okay, hold on a second. Let's talk about the logistics. Yeah. Let's talk about how this is going to impact the other important things in our lives.
Yes.
So yeah, I came to her first. We've been talking about us doing a like a couples podcast. Mm-hmm. I don't know, 6 months or so. And we've done brainstorms about what it would look like. She's still finishing up. Right now, she's doing her student teaching, finishing up her master's program. So she doesn't have a huge capacity to do the background work, from the websites to the podcast platforms and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, it was me bringing it up to her first.
I think we're like-minded. Well, I should say like-minded, that the relationship is kind of the same, where I'll have these kind of grandioso, is that the right? Where I'm telling you, I'm like, I'm going to do this and this and this. And she's pretty good about, well, let's simmer down. This costs money. More importantly, this costs time. But with that said, she's been unbelievably supportive of this. When you said that, this kind of pointed out some things that you struggled with doing the podcast, where you felt like inadequate about certain things.
Yeah.
What was the one thing that was kind of really standing out? Like, this is really going to get in the way of this?
Parenting.
Wow.
Yep. Being a dad. Again, I said it before, I have four daughters, and they're in a lot of different seasons of life, from being graduate from college to being in college to being in high school to being in elementary school. So, time is my most valuable commodity. Mm-hmm. If the PTA wants us to come volunteer for 5 hours or give $500, I'm giving $500. I don't care if I have to donate plasma, if I have to get a second job and start delivering newspapers. I'm going to sit there and figure out a way to not go give 5 hours to the PTA, which I guess the newspaper one wouldn't make a lot of sense, because that's probably going to take more than 5 hours. Figure of speech. Yeah. So yeah, just, as my daughters are human beings too. And so they are going through their own struggles in life. Right. And they're having mountaintop experiences with all four of them at different times. and they're also, they struggle just like I do. And so thinking about taking something else on and recognizing that I'm going to have to be really good about setting boundaries. Otherwise, I will allow it to spill over into the time that I should be spending with them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good that you had those discussions with yourself prior. I mean, I felt it before. Last night, I was feeling a lot of anxiety because I hadn't gotten an episode out. And my wife and I, we try and really block off time where we say at this time, we're going to watch TV, we're going to talk, we're going to do whatever we're going to do.
Yeah.
And she knew it was kind of bothering me, and was awesome enough to say, hey, this isn't the norm. Just take your time, go edit, do whatever you got to do. But I found myself a lot of times waiting until 10:30 at night when everybody else was asleep, and sacrificing maybe some of my own time to try and do this stuff. But I'm sure you'll have the same experience, or you're already having it, that when it's something that is like, this is yours and your wife's. There's no one telling you when to do this and when not to do it. You don't have a supervisor. This is yours. And that's, for me, coming from the military, coming into working different jobs where that was never the case. There's a drive that comes with that I hadn't experienced before. And I'm going to guess you're going to probably be feeling a bit of the same thing.
Yeah. And our goal of this is much like you've seen just on social media channels, is we haven't figured this all out, right? I mean, we feel like we're doing great sometimes, and then all of a sudden we crash and burn. And I think that's just the human experience.
Yes.
And so we're wanting to share our successes, but probably more importantly, some of our failures in life, and how we've messed it up, and maybe bring some humor to it. The one we've already recorded is actually titled "The Discipline of Dating," where we talk about carving out time with each other, whether it be outside of the house or just a TV show or a movie together, right? You don't have to sit there and go out and spend a bunch of money. You can sit there and do it at home. You just banish the kids to their rooms, tuck them into bed, and you have that protected time so that you can invest in your relationship. But we want to sit there and positively impact. We want that level of greatness. And I really firmly believe, and I think Jim Collins might talk about this in his book, Good to Great. I believe greatness is this thing that you always pursue. And if you're in the pursuit of it, you might be at it. But as soon as you stop and do your victory party, you probably just fell down to good. You're just good again, because you stop the pursuit. And so that's our hope with this. And who knows, it might totally crash and burn, but I only get to live this life once. I want to say, maybe you guys were saying this in episode 56 just today while I was listening to it. We only get to do this once, right? So we give it a shot. And if we positively impact a handful of people's lives, awesome. And if in a year, nobody's listening to the Gravity podcast, hey, nobody's listening to the Gravity podcast. That's fine. But we're excited. We're excited. I'm excited that she agreed to do it with me, and with me doing all of the background work. The one that we've recorded so far, we had a ton of fun with. Yes. And we're ribbing each other during it. And afterwards, we created a list of other things that we think we could probably, share some of our own personal stories, bring some humor to it, and give some people some takeaways of what they can apply in their own lives.
And what other thing could you do that, like you said, say you did this for a year and then it went away? You have this digital, I don't know if footprint's the right word, but you have this archive of this process. Your kids can listen to this 50 years from now. They're going to hear, their mom and dad talk about this stuff and joke and do. I've thought about that a lot. Like, hey, when I'm gone, my kids can listen to all this stuff. I keep it all on a hard drive. This is here forever. Yeah. So it's fun, man. It's fun. Yeah. I'm excited for you. I do think this is going to do some great things. I think you're really going to expand on the stuff that you were doing on the social media and just bring it to a whole another level. I'm excited to be on here, man.
Well, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you helping me. I'm still going to make mistakes, right? But you've helped me not make some of the mistakes that you probably made by sharing with me process. And so I'm a little bit better set up right now and ready for this because of you investing some time in me. So thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure.
And if anyone wants, I think I've already said it, but if people do want to connect with you, probably the best way is to go on consequenceofhabit.org.
Yes. Yeah. That would be the best way to do it. Just there's an info email from there that always comes to me. And we're going to be sending out weekly newsletters to keep people up to date with what's going on. We're throwing around the idea, you and I talked about the electronics. We're throwing out the idea of doing a digital fast, a 30-day digital fast, so people can sign up for that. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, for anyone that chose to sit there and click on this and listen to the Gravity Podcast, thanks for joining us. I hope that you check us out in the future and go and take care of your loved ones. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed listening to JT and my conversation as much as we enjoyed recording it. There's a couple things you can do. If you like hearing JT's thoughts, go to his podcast, Consequence of Habit, on all the major podcast platforms. Or if you want to know more about what he has going on through his nonprofit, go to consequenceofhabit.org and check that out today. As for the Gravity Podcast, man, if you would subscribe to this YouTube channel, if you would go to the same major podcast platforms and follow us, we'd really appreciate it. We're going to be bringing to you Marriage Mondays twice a month. Me and my wife are going to get on and dissect what it is to be married and how we're going to stay grounded in our foundations as a married couple and within our family. If you have any ideas, future podcast guests, or you just want to chat with me, shoot me an email at chris@gravityct.com. That's CHRIS@gravityct.com. And I'd love to hear from you. Take care of each other. Go hug on some people that you love and have a great day.